Look off on your left. You guys can see the sailboats heading in. You can also see those bridges still going up. All of our bridges on the main branch and the south branch go up periodically. Spring and the fall, May and October, Wednesdays and Saturdays, allowing for things like sailboats to head to and from the harbor. You guys can see they split in the center. The actual trunnion bridges here are double leaf. They open up there in the center. With a cantilevering portion that we can see better later on down the river there. So you guys can take some photos. Crap, where was I? Miss O'Leary. The urban legend says that it was her fault, but keep in mind that journalists who wrote the story said, it's not true, I made it up. So we did absolve her in 1997. Alrighty, put a pin in that because of the bridge. I'm a little bit behind, so put a pin in 1997. Remember that, because I will forget. Off on your right-hand side, we do need to jump back into architecture with this incredible feat of engineering, the upside-down building. 150 North Riverside Plaza has a footprint only 40 feet wide due to river restrictions on the east and 7 active subterranean railroad tracks on the west. The firm Gadget Partners engineered a marvel by taking up the full buildable plot with about several tons of concrete. The concrete is basically their concrete core. Functioning like the backbone, it goes from the ground to the top. You guys can see they then cantilevered out over their plot of land. They did so using the largest steel I-beams that they could find. And they were, of course, Belgian, that's right. They then built skyward, wide top, narrow base. It's constantly balancing. They've implemented a mass damper system. 160,000 gallons of water sit in several tanks on top of that tower. So when the wind pushes to the west, the water will move to the east to help keep it fully stable. The same firm, Gadget Partners, also completed Bank of America Tower on your left-hand side. Again, notice its cantilevering portion, accommodating for river restrictions, while still adding things like a cafe and a river walk to help embrace the location. Cool. Whiplash, right-hand side. 1990, Perkins and Whale, we have 100 North Riverside Plaza. The shorter 13-story portion of the back end built over active switching tracks. All the buildings off on your right are built over train tracks. With switching tracks and those crisscrossing lines, they could only be anchored to the ground of Riverside. A quick glance behind you will see on top of the shorter 13-story portion a large white bridge-like structure called a truss. With 5 of them up there, the far end is literally hanging from those trusses as they are only anchored to the ground riverside. It is structurally built like the letter P. On your immediate right, we have 2 North Riverside Plaza, Halliburton Route, 1920s. Very first public plaza built in the city of Chicago. First building built over the active railroad tracks beneath, and the Art Deco structure itself used to house Chicago Daily News offices up until the mid-70s when they officially and permanently closed their doors. I'm so sorry guys, I'm like dying over here. What are you guys going to do about that? Nothing. Now take a look off on your right. I've been talking about several buildings off on your right-hand side. This whole neighborhood is today known as the West Loop. Now right now the West Loop neighborhood is like the fastest growing neighborhood in Chicago. But it wasn't always. In the mid-century, around the 1950s, this neighborhood was largely commercial and industrial use. And access to the west side began by crossing active railroad tracks. So expansion westward became stunted. They decided to begin the 4-part Gateway Initiative by building on top of these active railroad tracks and opening up the west side to further development, beginning with Gateway 1 in 1965 and Gateway 2 in 1967. Gateway 1 and 2 are 2 twin, 22-story structures done in the international style of design, made famous in the nation by Ludwig von Mies van der Rohe. But you might notice something a little bit different. The buildings have these windows that are a little bit square and not as long. The architect here was not actually Mies van der Rohe. It was one of his students, the heavily influenced Bruce Graham, would later go on with this international style to design both the former John Hancock as well as the Willis Tower. Now off on your right at eye level, you can see, I'm not making this up, these are active railroad tracks. What you guys are looking at there, down there, that's technically called a choo-choo train. That is specifically though a Metro train. Metro is a train service servicing Chicago's suburbs in all directions, but we do also have Amtrak trains, a train service doing its best to service the U.S. as a nation. They all come into Union Station beneath these buildings, and I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, John, office buildings over railroad tracks sounds dumb. Hi, friend. And you're right, on paper, an office building over railroad tracks sounds like a terrible idea, but they've taken that under consideration. Gateway 3, the white building here, is soundproof and stable. You don't hear the trains beneath you, and the building does not shake as trains pass beneath your feet. The diesel fumes produced by the engines are then funneled out to the core and released above to ensure you don't breathe them in. Next door to that, with the X bracing here, we have a fitness formula club next door to a donut shop. The business plan. They're doing very well for themselves. But the building is fully supported externally by that X bracing because the interior space, being a training floor, had to be left open, column free, to see across the room the hand signals telling you to buy and sell your stock. Up next, we're right at eye level, more choo-choo trains. These are the Amtrak lines. Above that, we have Gateway 4. Gateway 4 here is a great example of contextualism. Contextualism is a big, fancy word that means its design is influenced after its location. Green glass, green river. Bend to the facade, slight bend in the Chicago River. You'll also notice a water-like texture to the building because all of Gateway 4's windows convex. They bend outward, which bends the reflection and gives it that rippling, water-like texture. Over the bridge there, the large beige building is the old Main Post Office, formerly known as the former Main Post Office, formerly known as the Post Office. When it opened up in the early 30s, the building was designed, actually fully completed in the 1930s, but it was developed over a course of about a decade, with the north portion, south portion, and this eastern portion here in the center. The north and south portions there are done in Art Deco, vertical orientation, geometric shapes, French origin. The center portion is done in the American response, Art Modern. Think of things like Streamline. It's a little bit more horizontally orientated. It's American origin, but it still does have those geometric shapes. Now, when this building opened up in the early 30s at its full completion, it was the largest post office in the world. Had to be. Chicago had 3 catalog companies shipping out of that building: Montgomery Ward, Sears & Roebuck, and Spiegel. And you can't tell by looking at it today, but in 1996 it was completely and utterly abandoned by the post office. It was then bought by a British developer, Phil Davies, who wanted nothing more than to turn this building in its entirety into a hotel and casino. The problem is, it was not going to be a Bally's hotel and casino. We fought back. We said, no, Phil. We deserve a Bally's. Bally's. Okay, we're done. You guys didn't seem super into that one. So the main issue was not what it was going to be called. The main issue was Bill Davies. Talked a big game, zero follow through. He neglected it. Not just of moving its life forward, but of basic maintenance. Began to fall apart by the early 2000s. By the late 2000s, chunks of concrete began falling from the structure, landing onto Congress Parkway, passing through it. So we had enough. We called him up. We said, Bill, do something so nobody dies. Figure out what you want to do, move its life forward, or we take it back to eminent domain. And he said, fine, I'll figure out something to do. To be fair, he did. He decided to sell it. And he did sell it to 601 West for $22 million. That check came in the mail, and Bill Davies died the next day. I know, really sad. I'm with you guys. Freaking hilarious. They call it poetic irony. Keep in mind, guys, the man died well into his 90s, and he died white-knuckling onto a check for $22 million. He's not the victim of the story. The building today looks pretty because of 601 West who developed it out. Today, the old Main Post Office houses companies you guys are probably familiar with, like PepsiCo and Uber, Walgreens headquarters, and the Ferrara Candy Company as well. We have off on your right where the post office moved, not for beauty, but for efficiency. Across the street here, Knights & Associates in 1996 developed a building about efficiency, with 3 separate branches for processing, distribution, and the administration of postal services. Left-hand side. Luxury condos. No, that's the Reed. The newest high-rise here, part of the South Bank development by Perkins & Will. The development by Perkins & Will is all a part of the revival of the South Loop neighborhood. The revival of the neighborhood began in the 1980s with this concrete structure on your left, River City, done by Bertrand Goldberg, the same gentleman who did those corn cobs. So if you guys would recall, no right angles. You see on the side there a dark window reflecting a vaulted hallway, and on top they have a glass ceiling. Both elements go all the way through this building, flooding its interior.